Good grade 9s. This brings us to the last part of factorizing, and we are now going to look at how we factorize 4 terms. The first part we've already done is when there's a highest common factor. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So the highest common factor here will be 2. So to take out the highest common factor, we write the highest common factor in front, and we divide the rest of the term, each term by 2, and we get A plus 4 divided by 2 is 2b, minus 6 divided by 2 is 3c, minus 2 divided by 2 is 1d. And when I look in the bracket, there's no like terms, I cannot do anything else, but I've got what I wanted, which is one single term. It's 2 times a bracket, so that means it's now factorized. It went from 4 terms to 1 term, and I am done. But what if I have to factorize 3x plus 3y plus tx plus ty. So now this becomes a bit more complicated because there is no highest common factor. So let's just rewrite this here. I have 3x plus 3y plus tx plus ty. So let's see what we have in common here. What is the same? So I can see there's a 3 and there's a 3. I've got x here. I've got an x there. I've got a y here. And I've got a y here. And then I also have a t here and a t there. So we have things that are the same. And if I look in the first 2 terms, I have a 3 and a 3. And the second pair, I've got a t and a t. So what I'm now going to manipulate this. I'm going to create a common factor. And how do I do that? I'm going to group. And when we group, we use brackets, because brackets means anything in a bracket represents a single number. So just rewrite this, and we group, say, the first 2 terms together. And we do that by putting this in a bracket, plus, and then we group the second pair of terms together, which is tx plus ty. So I've now gone from having 4 terms to just 2 terms. But I only want 1 term because I want to factorize. So now let's look at our first bracket. In our first bracket, we have a common factor. We have 3. And in my second bracket, I also have a common factor. I have a t. So let's take out the common factors out of the bracket. So then I'm going to get 3 times, and what is left in the first bracket, if I divide 3x by 3, I have x, plus 3y divided by 3 is y. So I have 3 times x plus y, which is still 1 term, plus in the second bracket, I have t as a common factor, so I write t in front, and I divide each term by t, and I have x plus y. So what did I accomplish? I made everything simpler, but it's still not simplest form. Simplest form means I must have 1 single term. So look carefully. I actually have a common factor now. I've got a bracket that is common in both terms. So now I'm going to take out the bracket. So I write the bracket in front. And in my second bracket, I get that by dividing each term with the bracket, or the highest common factor. And what will be left, that the brackets will cancel out. And I will have a 3 plus, and in that bracket I will have t. So now I've got one single term, which means that this thing is factorized to a bracket times a bracket. What would happen if I group it differently? Because actually from the beginning you could see there were different ways that I could group them together. If I, for instance, group the x's together and the y's together. So let's see. Alternatively, does that make a difference? So I'm going to rewrite this and say 3x, I'm going to group the x's, that term with the x in, and that term together, plus tx, plus then what is left is my other two terms. I will have a 3y, and I will have a ty plus ty. So now I've got two terms again. So I'm going to look inside the brackets. I've got a common factor in the first one, which is x. So I take it out. I write it in front. I divide that with x, and I get 3 plus t there. Plus, and I go to the second bracket. Here I've got y as a common factor, so I take y out, and I have 3 plus t in my second bracket. So look at my two terms now. It is now simpler, but it's not simplest. I again have a bracket that is the same. 3 plus t and 3 plus t is the same number, so I have a highest common factor in the two terms. So I'm going to take out the bracket, I write it in front, and then I divide the first term with the bracket, so the brackets cancel out, and I will just have x, plus I divide the second term with the brackets cancel out, and I will have y. So I get 3 plus t times x plus y, and can you see it's exactly the same as the previous one. So it didn't change my answer when I grouped differently. So let's look at one more example here. I'm going to factorize another 4-term expression. I'm going to factorize 3x minus 3y plus minus k. I think that must be plus 3y. Sorry, minus kx minus ky. So let's look at what is the same. Again, I've got a 3 there and a 3 there. And then I have, and please remember guys, the sign in front of a number goes with the number. So I actually have a minus k there and a minus k there that is common. So let's do one grouping where we group the first two terms together and the second two terms together. So I'm going to say my first grouping will be 3x plus 3y, and then I'm going to add to that the second bracket, which will be minus kx minus ky. So now I've got a common factor in both brackets, so we're going to take that out. I write it in front, I divide with the highest common factor, and I'm left with x plus y in the first bracket, plus in the second term, I'm going to take out negative k, so I'll just keep it in a bracket. And if I divide negative kx with negative k, I'm just going to get plus x, and if I divide negative ky with negative k, I'm going to get plus y. Voila! I have a solution because now I've got a common bracket. So let's take out the common bracket, write it in front. I'm dividing each term with the common bracket, and I'm going to, in my second bracket, if I divide the bracket, we'll go into that bracket once, and I'll be left with 3 plus I divide x plus y bracket into that term, and I'm going to get a negative k, which just become x plus y times a positive times a negative gives you a negative, so I'm going to have 3 minus k there. One term factorized, finished. Or let's look at the 4 term again. If I group differently, well, it gives me a different answer. So let's see. I have a x there in that term, and I also have x there. So let's group them together. So let's write it as 3x minus kx, and put that in a bracket, plus what is left then is the 3y minus ky. So 2 terms, 2 brackets. So let's see if we have common factors. So in my first bracket, x is a common factor. So if I take x out, I'm going to have 3 minus k left in the bracket, plus in my second bracket, I have y as a common factor. If I take y out, I'm going to have 3 minus k left. That means I have now a common bracket. So I'm going to take out the bracket, and I'm going to write the bracket in front, 3 minus k. Divide each term with the bracket. The bracket will go into the bracket once. I'll be left with x in the first term, plus if I divide the bracket into that term, they cancel out, and I will have y. And look at the 2 answers. It's exactly the same. So there is 2 ways to skin a cat in this case. You can group differently, but you will always get the same answer. So to summarize, when we have 4 terms, we can factorize by grouping and creating 2 terms with a common bracket.